Hey, what's good, tubers? Nannu here, and today I'd like to talk with you a little bit about my UFO experiences. So I just want to say up front that I don't have any, alien experiences or anything like that. I don't believe I've been abducted, anything like that. But there have been a couple of times in my life where I've experienced some strange flying phenomena.
Something strange in the neighborhood. Who you gonna call?
I should say, first off, I've never been a huge UFO guy. There was a time maybe in early high school, something like that, where I had sort of a passing fancy with UFO stories and UFOlogy or whatever. And, I enjoy a good, sci-fi tale as much as the next person. I'm a big Star Wars fan, clearly, and a big Star Trek fan. I love science fiction and fantasy. And I, even the more conspiracy angle stuff, X-Files, things of that nature. And I think, sort of broadly believe that aliens exist out there somewhere. I think, statistically, it's almost impossible that there isn't some form of life out there, even intelligent life, somewhere in the cosmos. I think is likely. But I'm still pretty agnostic when it comes to alien visitation, right? There are definitely things that we would qualify as unexplained flying objects, but do those have anything to do with aliens at all? I don't really know. So the first time I had any sort of experience like this was, I'm not exactly sure, but I want to say somewhere around 2009, 2010, something like that. Now, at the time, I lived in a small town in Texas, and I was driving home from a larger town that I had gone to I think go to a couple of stores, hit the mall, something like that, right? So I'm driving back home to small town Texas, which means it's basically pitch black everywhere. No street lights, very low light pollution, so, you can see all of the stars in the sky, and I'm driving on this very long bridge across what I believe is a man-made lake, somewhere around in central Texas. And as I'm driving across this bridge, I see out of the corner of my eye a glowing orb, right? Sort of fairly far away. I'd say, if I'm guessing, a quarter of a mile away, sort of out on the water, over the water itself. And as I'm driving, I see it out of the corner of my eye, and I'm thinking, okay, maybe it's just somebody on a boat or something like that, right? And as I continue driving, the orb's getting a little bit closer to me. But the strangest thing is that it's actually matching speed with me, right? So it's we're driving sort of parallel towards each other, and it's getting closer and closer. It stops probably still maybe 100 yards away. So I can't see any sort of particular form. It literally just looks like a ball of light traveling, I'm thinking of the speed limit, probably roughly 60, 70 miles an hour, parallel with me. And I'm starting to freak out here, because I'm what the hell's going on here, Are these aliens? Am I losing my mind? What exactly is going on here, right? And this goes on for a couple of minutes before it zooms off, sort of directly ahead of me and up into the air, and eventually turns into a wow, that is such a hard word to say. It eventually turns into a pinprick of light, and before vanishing from my sight entirely. And from what I remember, there wasn't any sort of ripple effect or anything like that over the water, right? So it's flying, probably just a few feet above the water, but despite its high speed, doesn't seem to be having any effect on the water itself. You would expect some sort of what would you even call that?
One Google search l'état.
Yeah, there wasn't a wake following behind this, light. Super weird. And I remember, because I was somewhat familiar with, X-Files and sort of, UFOlogy or whatever, sort of more broadly. I remember one thing being that, hey, electrical equipment sometimes acts up, or you might be losing some time or whatever. You'll look at a clock and then look again and 20 minutes have passed or something crazy like that, right? And I did my checks, but there didn't seem to be any sort of any electrical interference, and there didn't seem to be any lost time or anything like that. So, whatever. I know I'm sure the hardcore UFO heads out there are gonna, have some issues with this story, but pretty mild, nothing too crazy. Doesn't seem to be able to easily explain through hallucination, things like that. But nothing too crazy. The second story, however, is where it gets really nuts. So about 10 years later, right? So we're talking a couple of years ago now, somewhere around 2019, something like that. I'm staying over at my friend's place, and call him Sweet JB, because he's got such a big heart. Anyway, so long day. I'm thinking this is sometime over the weekend or whatever, so a little bit tired, whatever, right? and I'm having trouble sleeping. It's like somewhere between 2 or 3 in the morning. Kind of pacing around the apartment, playing video games, watching YouTube videos, whatever. Just chilling out, right? General Nannu fact for you here. I have incredible trouble sleeping. I have really bad insomnia. Anyway, as I'm there, chilling out, trying to, rest and relax, get ready for bed, all of a sudden I start to hear this droning sound. Almost, it sounded sort of similar to like a dump truck or like a garbage truck, something like that, right? So mechanical, loud, droning, whirring kind of, kind of sound, right? So this is an apartment complex. There might be somebody in a big old truck, maybe whose muffler doesn't work properly, who's parking or driving off, right? But the thing is that it starts to get progressively louder and louder over the course of several minutes. So what initially sounded like a garbage truck, maybe a couple blocks away, started to get louder and louder to where it was the sound of like an airplane, and then maybe even louder, like even louder than a jet airplane at its zenith, at its most loud. And so I'm in the living room of this apartment, and on one wall, there's a sliding glass door with these ceiling to floor blinds that are closed, but kind of peeking in between these blinds, right, is like really bright lights. So I'm still thinking it's like some sort of truck or something, right? So I go outside, getting ready to yell at this guy, being like, hey, it's like 2:30 in the morning. Why are you, doing this shit with all the noise and the lights and shit like that? Like, come on, have some consideration, you piece of shit, right? I mean, that's what I'm thinking. But as I slide open this door, right, to go into the porch area outside, I look up in this area in between sort of like the gate and the roof of the apartment patio above us. I see what I can really only describe as just like this massive ship, right? So it's vaguely kind of almond shaped. So imagine if you were to look up at a Star Destroyer, from Star Wars, kind of had a vaguely similar shape, although it was less angular and a little bit more round. This massive ship that basically takes up, my entire field of vision, right? If I were to guess, we're talking like hundreds, if not thousands of feet long, probably about twice as long as it is wide. And because of the angle that I'm at, I can't really get a sense of its depth, really, but it seems to be fairly deep. And it's this massive black, potentially metal, although it's kind of hard to tell, from the distance and stuff, ship-looking thing. And on the bottom side is a bunch of blinking and bright lights of various sizes and colors. Sort of reminds me a little bit of the lights that you would see on like an airplane, but much bigger and much brighter. So, and they were mostly like, I'm gonna try to remember here, like white, yellow, and red, I think was most of them. And it was the craziest shit I had ever seen in my entire life. It's slowly rolling, overhead, just incredibly loud, incredibly bright, and I'm just standing there, like jaw on the floor, staring up at this thing, being like, what the fuck is going on here? And I watch it just slowly fly off into the distance, and the noise continues for several minutes, getting progressively quieter and quieter. But I was just fucking dumbstruck. I was talking with my friend, Sweet JB, about this, and I'm just kicking myself now because I should have taken like some sort of picture or something. But I was just so stunned, so like
Boggle,
thinking I'm losing my mind or something here.
Do what they say, and everything will be okay, and everything will be okay, and everything will be okay.
No one else seemed to have been aware of it. It didn't wake anybody up. I looked a little bit around outside, didn't see any, neighbors moving around or anything like that. It was the damnedest thing. And I was just like, for hours, just kind of like reeling basically before I eventually fell asleep. And yeah, it was probably one of the craziest, trippiest experiences I've ever had in my entire life. We live close to airports and military bases, so take that with a grain of salt. But so, I'm not trying to make any sort of definitive claims as to, the exact nature of these phenomena. I mean, they are definitionally unidentified. I have no idea what they were. But yeah, that's sort of my experience. A little something I thought I'd share with y'all. You guys have any interesting, tiny kind of UFO experiences? But yeah, let me know what y'all think, and I'll catch y'all later. Take it easy. Take me to your weeder.